officers taking a woman into custody yesterday afternoon in front of her own young child.
Several migrants have now been involved in altercations with officers.
Immigration and customs officers have arrested almost 180 non-citizens.
The dire migrant situation in Chicago takes a dramatic turn. The standoff between migrants and Chicago's police force has come to a climax.
As many as 4 migrants are now facing criminal charges. They're accused of threatening, even hitting Chicago police officers in the last 2 days.
The increase in crime since the migrants' arrival is disturbing, leaving many citizens worrying for themselves and their families' safety.
12th District Chicago police officers about 6:20 this morning dealing with an increasingly tense situation, taking 2 alleged offenders into custody, police sources identifying the offenders as migrants.
As migrants and the police battle out in the streets, it begs the question, how can migrants stay in Chicago if they risk the lives of the city's residents? This bold step challenges the Windy City's promise of shelter. With laws that guarantee shelter for those in need, the city faces a real test, managing this surge without turning its back on its citizens. It's a moment that asks, what happens when the Windy City meets a logistical nightmare? The city's budget is already tense, sparking debate among city officials and leaders about the cause of action. Stay with us as we delve deeper into Chicago's intensifying migrant and crime crisis. Spike in migrant crimes.
A 21-year-old migrant faces charges for a scuffle with a police officer, apparently over access to public restrooms here at the 8th District Police Station.
Police encounters with migrants have escalated in frequency, according to, amongst others, Patrick Andreessen, saying overall crime has increased 13% in just 8 months. Since the arrival of thousands of migrants, the police have been up to their eyeballs in trouble. From petty theft to violent altercations, these migrants are causing havoc left, right, and center, stretching the resources and capabilities of Chicago's law enforcement to its limits.
2 days in a row, groups of Venezuelan migrants were charged with burglaries in DuPage County.
The situation has escalated to the point where police stations are overwhelmed, serving dual roles as shelters for migrants.
As of this morning, there were 794 migrants at police districts across the entire city.
And there's about 33 migrants here at the police station in the 24th district sleeping on the floor, and it is packed in there.
These migrants, they're not just causing trouble out on the streets, they're taking over police stations too. Can you believe it? This unexpected shift disrupts the core functions of these stations, complicating the already demanding job of policing.
A pair of Venezuelan migrants has been charged with stealing almost $3,000 in merchandise.
The police, they're working round the clock to keep the peace, but it's like fighting a losing battle. With every passing day, their encounters with migrants are skyrocketing. And guess what? It's not getting any easier. With more migrants pouring in by the day, it's like trying to plug a leaky dam with your finger. But it's not just about the numbers or the types of crimes. The essence of the challenge lies in the interaction between the police and migrants, with language barriers, cultural differences, and often a deep-seated mistrust of authorities. These encounters are far from straightforward. It's a multifaceted problem that requires more than just a traditional approach to policing.
Things got pretty heated during a protest in Brighton Park this morning. In the last 2 hours, residents showed up with drums, cymbals, and signs, upset over construction for a possible tent location for migrants.
The police are having to deal with protests, too. That's right, citizens are hitting the streets demanding action from Brandon Johnson against the influx of migrants.
When do citizens of the United States of America come first? How about this? Give them all these politicians' addresses and put them in their backyards, in their basements, in their houses.
They're fed up, and they're not afraid to make their voices heard. So there you have it, a spike in migrant crimes, police stations overrun, and protests on the rise. It's a recipe for disaster. And unless something changes fast, Chicago's in for a rough ride. Stay tuned as we explore this topic further. The housing challenges.
This is exactly the situation city leaders and migrants feared. There are thousands of asylum seekers sleeping on sidewalks all over the city.
Picture this. As you walk down your usual path, something different catches your eye. The sidewalks, once clear, are now lined with tents. This is the new reality in Chicago, a visible sign of a growing crisis that's unfolding right on Chicago's streets. The issue at hand? Housing, or rather, the stark lack of it for the increasing number of migrants finding their way into the city's community. It's a challenge that's both visible and visceral, affecting not just the migrants forced to endure the elements, but also the residents who call these streets home.
The mayor's office confirming tonight that the type of giant framed tents that are currently being used to house migrants in New York City are similar to what Chicago was looking to do to ease the migrant housing crisis here.
Let's break it down. First off, the tents. They're more than just fabric and poles. They're makeshift homes for those with nowhere else to go. And their presence is a stark reminder of the safety and security concerns that both residents and migrants face. It's not just about comfort, it's about health.
More and more asylum seekers are getting sick. Mayor Brendan Johnson says migrants are coming to Chicago sick. Volunteers say that's not the point.
At least 6 people have been taken to the hospital from that shelter in Pilsen over the past few days, mostly children.
With inadequate shelter, migrants are exposed to the harshness of the elements, including the biting cold of winter. But beyond the physical discomfort, there's a deeper issue of public health and safety, as crowded, unsanitary conditions can become breeding grounds for illness. Many Chicagoans are already worried about the sickness these migrants take with them to the city, so spreading them further only fuels the fire in the people. Then there's the financial angle.
Chicago's pouring millions of dollars into dealing with the migrant crisis, but where's the money being spent?
Leaders say the city can no longer foot the bill and are calling on the federal government now for immediate help.
Housing an ever-growing population is no small feat, especially when resources are already stretched thin. The costs associated with providing shelter, health care, and basic necessities are monumental, and they're expenses that fall on the community as a whole. It's a financial burden that's felt by everyone, directly or indirectly. Taxpayers are fuming with their hard-earned money going to a problem they don't even support themselves. But perhaps the most challenging aspect of this crisis is the sense of insecurity it breeds among residents. The sight of tents and the people living in them can evoke a range of emotions, from sympathy to fear, and everything in between. It's a complex issue that goes beyond simple solutions, touching on themes of compassion, responsibility, and community. The influx of migrants.
9 more buses carrying people arrived in Chicago today. That is the most in one day ever.
State leaders say they've been told to expect up to 25 buses of migrants each day.
Buses filled to the brim have become a common sight, each one unloading dozens of asylum seekers into Chicago. The reason? Chicago's status as a sanctuary city, a place with welcoming arms and promises of protection for those who arrive. But this open arms strategy has begun to bite, as Chicagoans take their fury to city leaders in new protests. But here's the kicker. Chicago's resources are being stretched thin. From shelters to social services, the demand is skyrocketing, putting a strain on the city's already overburdened systems. And let's not forget about the impact on the neighborhoods. With more migrants settling in, there's a palpable shift in the cultural landscape, as new faces and voices become part of the fabric of our communities. The sheer volume of arrivals is staggering. Each bus represents not just a logistical challenge, but a human one.
A record number of buses, 36 of them filled with asylum seekers, has arrived in the city since Saturday.
As Chicago grapples with how to integrate, support, and accommodate these new members of the society. The impact is immediate and multifaceted, touching every corner of the community, from schools and hospitals to the job market and housing. But it's not just about the quantity of migrants. It's also about the quality, or lack thereof, of support and assistance available to them. Overcrowded shelters, understaffed social services, and a lack of adequate housing options paint a grim picture of the reality facing migrants in our city. And let's not forget the strain they're placing, exacerbating existing challenges and leaving residents feeling like they've been left high and dry. But perhaps most concerning of all is the impact of the influx of migrants on Chicago's communities and neighborhoods. From increased crime rates to cultural clashes and social tensions, the ripple effects of this mass migration are being felt far and wide.
Nobody asked us, nobody told us. We have more than a few thousand people who signed a signature here who said no. We said no.
Tensions escalate on the southwest side as the city gets closer to housing at least 2,000 migrants at a base camp in Brighton Park.
Residents are growing increasingly frustrated and disillusioned, wondering why their concerns are being sidelined in favor of catering to the needs of newcomers. The government's response.
I would, in fact, make sure that we immediately surge to the border. All those people are seeking asylum. They deserve to be heard. That's who we are. We're a nation that says if you want to flee and you're fleeing oppression, you should come.
First on the docket, we have President Biden and his administration, who have championed a more humanitarian stance towards immigration.
And let's also come together on immigration. Make it a bipartisan issue once again.
Since taking office, they've pledged to overhaul the nation's immigration system, advocating for comprehensive reform and a pathway to citizenship for undocumented immigrants. Under their watch, measures have been introduced to improve conditions at migrant detention facilities, streamline asylum processes, and increase refugee admissions. Their rhetoric emphasizes empathy and compassion for migrants fleeing violence, persecution, and poverty, reflecting a commitment to upholding America's legacy as a beacon of hope and opportunity for those in need. However, this approach has not been without its detractors. Critics argue that Biden's policies have inadvertently incentivized illegal immigration, leading to a surge in arrivals at the border and straining resources in border communities. They point to a perceived lack of enforcement and deterrence, which they claim has emboldened migrants to undertake dangerous journeys in the hope of gaining entry into the United States. Moreover, concerns have been raised about the administration's ability to effectively manage the influx of migrants, with some suggesting that a more robust response is needed to address the root causes of migration and prevent future crises. Closer to home in Chicago, we have Brandon Johnson, tasked with representing the Biden administration's policies and initiatives at the local level.
I know folks may have questions about my style, but don't question my leadership.
You know, this is a global crisis. It's affecting us all. These are asylum seekers. These are not illegal people. The moment they step on American soil, they are now officially protected by international law.
The mayor's doubling down on the importance of helping the asylum seekers.
Johnson has echoed the administration's calls for compassion and solidarity, advocating for policies that support migrants and address the underlying factors driving migration. He's been instrumental in coordinating efforts to provide assistance and support to migrants in Chicago, working alongside local organizations and community leaders to ensure their needs are met. However, like his counterparts in Washington, Johnson faces criticism from those who believe his approach is too lenient and fails to adequately address the challenges posed by the influx of migrants.
Joe Biden is not doing his job. Joe Biden is responsible for the largest amount of illegal immigration in the history of the United States.
There's only one reason why this is happening, and that's because Joe Biden has eliminated all of the 4 policies that Donald Trump put in place that led to the lowest illegal border crossings in 40 years.
Governor Abbott has been a vocal advocate for tightening border security and staunchly supports policies aimed at curbing illegal immigration. Abbott has taken decisive action, deploying Texas National Guard troops and law enforcement resources to reinforce border patrols. His stance is clear: a firm hand is needed to stem the tide of illegal migration. However, critics argue that his emphasis on enforcement overlooks the underlying factors driving migration, such as poverty, violence, and political instability in migrants' home countries. They assert that a solely punitive approach fails to address the root causes and perpetuates a cycle of desperation and migration. But beyond the political posturing lies the stark reality of the situation on the ground. In Chicago and other communities grappling with the fallout of the migrant influx, the government's response has tangible consequences. Overcrowded shelters, strained social services, and heightened tensions between residents and migrants paint a vivid picture of the challenges at hand. It's a complex issue that defies easy solutions, requiring a delicate balance between compassion and practicality. The residents' response:
these South and West Side homeowners are angry.
Protect black housing in Chicago.
They believe the city has overextended itself and should be putting the tens of millions of dollars earmarked for migrants into Chicago's most vulnerable neighborhoods.
But the South Side has been under-resourced, underfunded for years, for decades. We have schools that need to be reopened.
Residents are beyond furious. They're seething with anger at what they perceive as an invasion of their communities by migrants, disrupting the fabric of their daily lives and draining their already limited resources. They're incensed by the sight of overcrowded shelters, where migrants are housed at their expense while their own needs are overlooked and neglected. But it's not just about the practical inconveniences. It's about the profound sense of injustice that gnaws at them. They feel like they're being unfairly burdened with the consequences of decisions made by politicians miles away, with little regard for the impact on their lives. They're tired of shouldering the financial strain of supporting migrants who they believe have no right to be here in the first place. And let's talk about safety. Residents are livid about the escalating crime rates that accompany the migrant influx. They're outraged by the brazen acts of violence and lawlessness that now plague their once peaceful neighborhoods. They feel like their sense of security has been shattered as they lock their doors tighter and look over their shoulders more frequently, fearing for their safety and that of their loved ones. But perhaps most infuriating of all is the perceived indifference of those in power.
Officials tonight said Daly College is an ideal location because it's move-in ready and a fraction of the cost of a hotel. But many in the crowd didn't want to hear it.
Residents are fed up with politicians who offer nothing but empty promises and platitudes in response to their legitimate concerns. They're angry at being ignored, dismissed, and marginalized by the very people who are supposed to represent their interests and protect their communities. As this tempest of rage rages on, residents are not backing down. They're mobilizing, organizing, and demanding action from those in power. They're raising their voices, marching in the streets, and holding their elected officials accountable for their failure to address the crisis at hand. How to fix the crisis.
We're going to build the wall. We have no choice. We have no choice. Build that wall. Build that wall. Build that wall.
First off, closing the border. This isn't about shutting out migrants altogether. It's about regaining control and restoring order. Tightening border security can help stem the flow of illegal immigration, reducing the strain on local resources and communities. But it's not just about building walls and beefing up patrols. It's about investing in smart, effective strategies that prioritize both security and humanity. Next up, let's talk about Biden's stance.
Let me say again, to any country, any organization, anyone thinking of taking advantage of this situation, I have one word: don't. Don't. Our hearts may be broken, but our resolve is clear.
President Biden's administration has emphasized the importance of comprehensive immigration reform, and they're not wrong. Addressing the root causes of migration, such as poverty, violence, and political instability, is key to preventing future crises. By working with international partners and investing in diplomacy, development, and humanitarian assistance, we can help create safer, more stable conditions in migrants' home countries, reducing the need for them to leave in the first place. But what about Trump's stance?
The other thing I say to President Biden, close the borders now. This is not sustainable for our country. It's not sustainable for our cities. Our country is under siege. This is a violent thing that you've done, and many people are dying.
Former President Trump favored a more hardline approach, focusing on enforcement and deterrence measures to curb illegal immigration. While some may argue that his tactics were harsh or divisive, others believe they were necessary to protect national security and sovereignty. Whether you agree with his policies or not, there's no denying that Trump's administration brought immigration to the forefront of the national conversation, sparking debates and discussions that continue to shape policy decisions today. And let's not forget Governor Abbott's stance. Governor Abbott has taken decisive action to secure the border and combat illegal immigration in Texas.
What Texas is doing, as has been seen by video after video after video, is we are adding more razor wire as we speak right now to make sure that we are doing even more to secure the border.
From deploying National Guard troops to implementing stricter enforcement measures, he's shown a willingness to take bold steps in addressing the crisis. Whether you agree with his methods or not, there's no denying that Abbott's leadership has played a significant role in shaping the response to the migrant influx in Texas and beyond. In the end, fixing this crisis will require a multifaceted approach that combines enforcement, reform, and diplomacy. It's not a problem that can be solved overnight, but with determination, collaboration, and a willingness to think outside the box, we can chart a course towards a brighter future for migrants, residents, and communities alike. Conclusion. It's crystal clear that the situation in Chicago demands our immediate attention and concerted effort. The surge in migrants has strained resources, sparked tensions, and left residents feeling frustrated and abandoned. From overcrowded shelters to rising crime rates, the repercussions are felt far and wide, casting a shadow over the city's sense of security and stability. But amidst the chaos and turmoil, there's a beacon of hope shining through. We've explored a range of strategies to address the crisis, from tightening border security to pursuing comprehensive immigration reform. While each approach has its merits and drawbacks, what's clear is that a multifaceted solution is needed, one that combines enforcement, compassion, and forward-thinking policies. So where do we go from here? Well, it's going to take more than just lip service and empty promises to turn the tide. It's going to require bold action, collaborative effort, and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths head-on. It's going to demand that we set aside our differences, roll up our sleeves, and get to work on finding real, tangible solutions to the challenges at hand. But let's not kid ourselves. This won't be a quick fix. The road ahead is fraught with obstacles and uncertainties, and there are bound to be setbacks along the way. But with perseverance and determination, we can overcome whatever challenges come our way and emerge stronger, more resilient, and more united than ever before. So, as we bid adieu to this discussion, let's carry forward the lessons we've learned and the insights we've gained. Let's remember the power of empathy, the importance of community, and the resilience of the human spirit. And let's pledge to stand together, shoulder to shoulder, as we confront the challenges of today and build a brighter, more inclusive tomorrow for all who call Chicago home.